Ordinary Women, and I'm Margarita. And I'm really excited to be able to share with you stories of ordinary women, women in our community, perhaps even your next door neighbour, women who have had a dream or an idea and followed it through to fruition, whether that fruition was success or just a great big learning curve. Their stories will encourage you, uplift you, and hopefully inspire the seeds of greatness within your heart. So today on Extraordinary Ordinary Women, I'm honoured to introduce a truly inspiring woman whose story beautifully weaves together culture, healing, resilience, and purpose. Fiona Harrison is the founder of Chocolate on Purpose, Australia's first Indigenous-owned chocolate company. A proud Wiradjuri woman, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly, Fiona, has created far more than a chocolate business. Through native botanicals, storytelling, and ethical enterprise, she is helping to bring Indigenous culture, healing, and into everyday life. What makes Fiona's journey especially powerful is that her business was born from a deep personal adversity and transformed into a mission that now touches countless numbers of people. Her work reflects courage, creativity, cultural pride, and a deep desire to create positive impact for others. So, without further ado, welcome Fiona to Extraordinary Ordinary Women. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
You're Lumarang, that's G'day in the language of my old people, the Wiradjuri people. Thank you, Margarita. I'm really excited to meet Fiona now. That was just a wonderful introduction. I feel really blessed that I got to listen to that. So thank you so much.
Oh, lovely, lovely. So before we dive into this story, and in fact, you used an Aboriginal, an Indigenous word there. What I was really impressed in our communication here prior to doing this interview this morning was the beautiful use of your words at the end of your emails. That really, yeah, that was really lovely, I felt. Yeah. Anyway, so Fiona, back to where are you tuning in from? Where are you dialing in from today?
So I am blessed to be on Gundungurra land in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales. My family are Wiradjuri. My family names are Brown and Potts, and with connections through from Cowra to Carcoar to Orange to Wellington and out west as far as Peak Hill. I relocated several years ago for various reasons, and so now I'd like to acknowledge the beautiful green and very wet lands that I live on now, but it always takes my breath away when I see those big conifer trees. So yeah.
Oh, how divine, because we're still moving through a drought up here and it's really droughty looking. But anyway, so Fiona, what led you to starting the chocolate business? Take us back to the beginning. Like what first inspired the creation of Chocolate on Purpose? Your business carries such meaning and intention. How did your personal journey shape the vision behind it?
Thank you, Marguerite. I mean, that's always a really interesting question when I'm asked it, because I think that, we are very much the sum of our life experiences. So if I looked at what the catalyst was, it would have been that I, because of my history, I had a predisposition to depression, and I'd had two children, and postnatal depression was part of my journey. And then I worked in a bank, and I was the manager of the retail area. And one afternoon we had two armed robbers hide upstairs in the building and then come down once the doors closed, and so we were hostages in that armed robbery. And it was like a powder keg. So everything, my whole life experience to date, just blew up and landed. My life landed in all different pieces that were very foreign to me, and it became a journey of putting those pieces back together, rediscovering who I was. And so I developed post-traumatic stress disorder, and it was a
Yes. Yeah.
complex PTSD because it also involved a panic disorder. And so I think that, when you go through something like that, you're looking for ways to create healing. And I started on this journey of discovering essential oils. So it was just like an everyday user. And I had just discovered them, and I bought this compress for my face, and it contained an ingredient called lavandin. And, I came to learn that was a very poor relation of lavender with really no, therapeutic value. But I woke up in the middle of the night, in the middle of a panic attack. I didn't know who I was or where I was, and I staggered into the bathroom, and I just I saw this on the sink, and I reached and put it in some water and splashed my face, and I noticed that my breath came a little bit easier. So then I got in the shower with it, and I started to feel a little better again. And so then I put it into a bath, and I sat in it for about an hour, and I was able to get out of the bath and get myself and the kids ready for the day ahead. And what was really interesting is I never had another panic attack. So
Wow.
I'm really fascinated by something that apparently had no therapeutic value. How could it have this, phytochemical benefit to me in that moment? So I went on to study aromatic medicine, and met my good friend Jo, who she's a lifelong friend who just helps me in my business. She's just such a good friend, but she's also like a support person for me, because because of COVID, a lot of the sort of the anxiety came back. So Jo is really, she's always with me, just keeping me walking straight and making sure that I don't succumb to those feelings of just wanting to hide. So and where I met Jo was during those studies. And what I noticed in my practice was that when money got tight, people would stop self-care. They wouldn't stop self-medicating with alcohol.
Yeah.
COVID taught us, but they would stop things like massage and naturopathy, and that frustrated me because my way of sharing the health benefits of these plants, it was gone. And I wanted to, and Jo was experiencing the same thing in her practice. So we were looking for a way to share these power of these plants. And then along that journey, I discovered Australian native essences.
Yes.
And so as my kids grew up, I morphed myself to be able to spend as much time with them as I could. And so one of my journeys with work was I studied chocolate making.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was
What
during
got you into
the
chocolate?
lessons. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
I've been a bookkeeper, I've been an adult trainer, just do it because of my relationship with my mother, who had very poor mental health. She was missing from my life, like in presence and emotionally. So I tried to create that, the opposite of that for my kids. So I was in a chocolate making class, and it was an open class for family and friends. So Jo was with me, and the teacher said, we're going to make, and we were making chocolate the old way, like, tempering on marble, like in the movie Chocolat. And the
right.
teacher said, we're going to make a raspberry and native pepperberry. And I thought, oh my gosh, maybe this is how I could share the power of the native botanicals. And
Yeah.
honestly, Jo and I were brainstorming, and I just said to her, it's bush food chocolate. I'm going to use native botanicals. That's what my ancestors have been using for over 65,000 years. And that's the day the chocolate range, bush food chocolate, was born. And then a few days later, I was out at dinner with some friends, brainstorming business names, couldn't come up with anything. Suddenly we're in the car park, and I just looked at them, and like this clangor of an idea just dropped in my head. I said, there's chocolate on purpose, because the chocolate
Oh,
is the driver of the impact I want to create. And so from the minute I started the business, it was all about doing what I could do to be of service, and
yeah.
to create the change I wanted to see in the world. So it started out with sharing the benefits of the native botanicals, because they really are superfoods. continually surprising scientists in the properties that they've got. And then as the business evolved through different business decisions, always wanting to do the best by people, especially those in my supply chain, somewhere along the line, I ended up creating a social enterprise.
So please, would you take us back to what channeled you into doing the chocolate course? Because what I'm finding through all of my interviews and with like my own life, there is a light bulb moment that something crosses your path, and for whatever reason you go down that, and that if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. The universe pops things
Yes,
into your pathway. So that was really
yeah,
interesting. You're doing these oils, and then like chocolate is so foreign to, well,
yeah,
not foreign together, but it's very different to working with oils.
it
So
is.
what
I
was,
think,
yeah,
yeah. I think that those when you talk about the universe, I've always had a belief in that, because my aromatherapy studies were very much about the metaphysical and epigenetics and all of that sort. So I'm not foreign to that concept. What I started to discover as I was going through this healing journey was that I became more conscious of, like, I called them clangers, because they were literally ideas that would fall into my head with a clang, and I
wow.
just knew coming from the ancestors. And so I think that the movie Chocolat motivated me. I loved the rhythm. It was very much like a massage. Like I always said, that when I was massaging, it was like a moving meditation. And so when I was watching that movie, beyond all of the hot feelings for Johnny Depp, like I really felt that chocolate moving on the marble, and I was going, oh my gosh, like that's another moving meditation. And so
Right.
that sort of triggered my curiosity. And
Right.
and I suppose part of your healing is your self-care, feeding your soul. And so that caused me to become interested in that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That's you've sparked my interest. I watched that, gosh, so many years ago, but obviously wasn't on the same plane as yourself. So I'm now inspired to go back and watch it again.
Yeah, like, the depths of movies never surprised me. And I suppose, that'd be the reason, like many people would say, I wear my heart on my sleeve, or I'm too sensitive. But I think that those aspects of who I am, they make me really conscious of layers, where
And,
I can see
and
things others don't.
yes, and it depends where you are at. I think when I saw it, there was
Absolutely.
nothing happening in my life that was extraordinarily
Absolutely.
challenging. So,
Yes.
it was
Yes.
just a look good, feel good movie at the time.
And I
Yeah,
think that's why, we say, we see what we're meant to see, because of that moment in time and what's happening, exactly what you described.
yes, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So the next question is, what were some of the challenges? Every purpose-driven journey comes with its challenges. What were some of the hardest moments along the way for you? For example, as an
Yep.
Indigenous woman in business, were there barriers or misconceptions you had to overcome? And how did you keep moving? You don't have to answer them all, but these were just ideas,
No, yeah, no,
some of
thank you. I think first up, um, when I discovered, so when I founded Chocolate on Purpose, a 25-year marriage had just ended. And because of circumstances within that, I left that relationship with little money and hardly any super.
yes.
So I was very much at that stage really invested in having full-time work, because I had to get a small mortgage. I moved out of Sydney. I moved back where my family were from, because I wanted to just do things differently. So I had a very daggy fibro home, but it was mine with a mortgage, and I had like hardly any super. So I went into full-time work, and that was really important to me, because I needed to get the super. All the talk about the super. So I was doing Chocolate on Purpose as a side hustle, and I never really had the money to be able to just launch it, like I started in the farmers market, and if you sort of sat with me and heard the journey, you'd know that it's just been a matter of just doing things that when I could afford them. I would have loved to have launched, like, you see other businesses do, where they've got all their special packaging, but that wasn't meant to be for me. So that was a challenge. Money's always a challenge. It really controls your capacity and your capability. Then, being an Indigenous business, those comments, especially on Facebook, of you're not Black, you're just a pretend, what percentage are you, all of those sorts of things, which, have even become worse after the Voice result, because it's like permission to be a racist. So those sorts of comments could get you down. But, I just kept moving through that. Then the next thing would be that when I shared with you that somewhere along the line I created a social enterprise, when I started to make the chocolate, I became very aware of what's happening for cacao farmers. In 14 years, it really hasn't changed. So they're having to live on subsistence wages. They've got to get their family to work for them because they can't afford to pay for labour. So that's the risk of the modern slavery. They've only got small parcels of land, and they can't have enough trees on that land to make a living. So they're many slowly pushed into natural habitat so that they could plant more trees. Their trees take 10 years to fruit. They've got this virus that's happening, this powdery mildew that's affecting their crop. And cocoa beans are a commodity. They're traded in the futures exchange just like currency. And so it's all these big men up here in the ivory towers who are dictating how much money that they get. So they've got a pretty hard plight. So very early on, I found a chocolate brand that aligns with a charity where they go in and they teach the farmers agroforestry, how to manage their crop. I have used fair trade chocolate. They educate the women, and villages change when women are able to engage in small micro businesses, which is exactly what Global Sisters is about, and mitigating modern slavery. So that was my first attachment there. Then I discovered the plight of the environment because of palm oil. So even sustainable palm oil is not good, because many of the rainforests that they're clearing are known as peat rainforests. So the peat on the ground is like the mantle, the covering of the earth, and it's sequestered like thousands and thousands and thousands of years of carbon dioxide, and they have to burn that peat because the tree won't grow in it. And so as soon as they do that, all of that tens of thousands of years of CO2 is released into the atmosphere. So, they're clearing like the equivalent of 3 football-sized fields every hour. And so I've chosen not to use palm oil in my chocolate. And so those weren't easy choices. I had to find the chocolate, and then I had to incorporate that costing into my business, because I've ended up having to use gourmet chocolate like chef's grade, which is not what other chocolates are made of, because I can trace every bean back to the farmers collective where it's grown. So I know that these issues are being mitigated. And then the second thing I became aware of was that with the Australian native and botanical supply chain, it's been founded and prospers on the back of, Indigenous intellectual and cultural property, yet there's less than 2% representation by Indigenous people in those supply chains. So I source from Indigenous growers wherever I can, but when there's less than 2% of them in the market, then it's not easy to find. And then because of the processing of the fruit that I have to use so it doesn't seize the chocolate, there's even fewer to choose from because they don't have the technology to be able to turn the fruit into freeze-dried powder. So that's been a big challenge. But, it's worth it. I love when I'm able to collaborate with them, because I like to share their business and highlight their business as well. And, that mutual building each other up is really how we're going to be more successful. And so then the third thing was that um, through cultural studies, I learned that the bush food is actually the matriarchal responsibility of women. Traditionally, we're the matriarchal holders of these plant knowledge systems, and we shared them through storytelling. So the kids would be out with us, gathering, learning about it, passing the knowledge down through that way. And so of that 2% representation, even fewer are women. And so, it became my mission to help to bring women in, because we believe that the assimilation policies never destroyed our culture, but it went inside because it wasn't safe. And when we engage in the activities of our ancestors, it triggers a healing response and a remembering, which is what that paragraph at the bottom of my emails is about. Remember. And so, I want to help women to step into that matriarchal role again, and to use the botanicals and to step into leadership in the industry, because it's our matriarchal right. So they've probably, and so, to be able to do that, I need to be able to scale so that I can produce more, so that I can afford to bring women in. So that's been an ongoing challenge for a number of years. So they would be my main ones.
Well, it certainly has been a journey, and a journey through time to process, to find, to research and find and bring that all together. That sounds absolutely incredible. And I interviewed another woman a little while ago, Jana from Armidale, who was in the same position. She started off with farmers markets, launching her organic chai teas, and it was an amazing story like yours. Yeah.
Lovely.
So, and I did chuckle when you mentioned the divorce, the outcome of it, because yes, that's a very familiar story.
Yes, well, that's what, Mandy and Global Sisters did there's a book soon to be released, which is, no, I think it has been released. That was Grace. Yeah, all about those journeys of women. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Which actually I've
So,
been blessed, and I'm in that particular book. Yes,
how are
yeah.
you? Wonderful.
But
It's very special.
you're in the first one, aren't you? Grit.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, amazing woman. Yeah, and amazing stories. Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So what have been some of the rewards? Because in everything that we do, there are rewards, otherwise we wouldn't keep going. Um,
Yes.
yeah. What have been some of the meaningful rewards?
I think that the biggest reward for me is that sometimes, well, often, when you're sitting in a solopreneur type business and you're in the thick of it doing things, and you're making social media posts because you know that you should, and you can see some correlation that, often when you post, you'll get a ka-ching off your website, so you've made a sale. So, but often it just feels like you're talking to white noise.
Yeah.
But then somebody will make a comment on a post. And in particular, when I send out an email, a number of people will reply to my emails and tell me just how they're feeling about what I do. And that
Wow.
really touches my heart, because I know I'm blessed that people would do that, because we're all so busy. As we're scrolling, we don't even like anymore. We're scrolling so fast. Once upon a time, it'd be a like, but they wouldn't comment. And now there's not even a like, because they'll tell you they've seen your post and they liked it, but it's just that they see it and then they move on, because we're all so busy. So
Yeah.
when I get that personal response, it's so rewarding, and it makes me feel like I am heard. It does matter. And it's important to keep going.
And that is so true. I found that with my business, when people actually take the time to make a comment, it's just lovely. You feel, oh, what I'm doing is worthwhile. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Fiona, what does success mean to you now compared to when you first started?
Well, when I first started, it was like, oh my God, I made it to the market, because I also started farmers market was my business model,
Yep.
and handmade markets. And then when the bushfires came through the area in 2020, I lived in a tourism town, so like business halved. And then we'd only just started to get back on track, and then the COVID lockdowns hit, and I didn't have a business model. And it was thanks to Jo that she had a great interest in online stuff, and she had run a bookshop. She got me onto a very simple sales page online with a shopping cart, and I became aware of hashtags and started using them, and I started to get some sales online, and then suddenly corporate Australia stood up, and I'm going to support bushfire affected, COVID affected, women led Indigenous business. And I was able, very fortunate, to come in at a time when they were getting momentum. And I started to build a real business base in corporate Australia, which I'm very blessed that it continues until today. So yeah, I can really appreciate that.
Yeah. So, in conclusion, Fiona, what's one message from your heart that you would leave with your audience?
I really believe that it's important you be in a space that you're passionate about, because business is hard. Um, there are times, well, there's not even once, like many times, I'll go to bed crying because I've had a particularly hard moment to get through, saying, I
Yeah.
just can't do this anymore. I'm too old for this. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop. And then the next morning, I just jump out of bed. Well, don't jump anymore, but anyway, get out of bed and I just come, I have breakfast, and then I sit down and I start working, and I go, hang on a minute, I thought that I wasn't going to do this anymore. But because there's that passion in it, you just, like, I don't know, it's not even something you consider. It's just you keep
You do.
doing it, and that's what'll get you out of bed, and that's what'll keep you going, and that's what will warm your heart and feed your soul. So you have to really care about what you're doing. I don't think it works to just get into something because it's a niche market. That's just dry and boring.
Yeah. I'm totally with you on everything you've just said. Not jumping out of bed, have to do something that you're passionate about. And particularly what I've discovered now that I'm living by myself is that there's not that companion slash partner who's close by to run things through, to air, to vent. I mean, I have dogs and goats and all sorts of things who listen to me, but aren't able to respond as a partner used to. And it,
Yes,
it can be tough by yourself. I mean,
yes,
we're both blessed to have a very good friend, but it's just not quite the same as having somebody in the house. But yeah, that's all right.
yes.
We moved through that and have grown and adapted. So
Well,
Fiona,
I've got mine. Yes,
let's keep going. You've got your
I've
Joe.
got mine in the house. So, a part of the book, I think it was Grit. I'm confused now about the Global
Yes.
Sisters book. Sorry, but there was
Yeah.
the one about anyway, what happened was, when the mortgage rate started going up and all the power bills started going up, Jo and I were both experiencing great difficulties trying to run our own little houses. And so we were having a big bitch about this over a glass of wine. And I just suddenly had one of those clangers, and I said, what are we doing? Like, why don't we leverage each other in older age? Because, Jo doesn't have any kids. Mine are grown up and long gone from home. And plus I had the PTSD. So I had a really violent neighbour who was triggering me. And I said, why don't we just find somewhere to live that's big enough that we've got our own areas to retreat to, but we can share all of these expenses. And so it was a 6-month journey. And that's one of the reasons I relocated where I am now from Wiradjuri country, because Jo and I now, we live in the same house. So I really hear what you're saying, Margarita. Like, she helps my mental health by being here. She's now a captive helper. She's a hostage. But, like, I really understand what you're saying. It does make a difference.
Oh, Fiona, isn't that interesting how just words flow for whatever reason. And I am so grateful. For me, the essence of this interview with you, you have touched on something so vital and so important in this last little bit. All the rest has been valuable. I mean, I'm building my own business, but that bit there,
Yes.
being by yourself, because I have this massive house, as it's, far too big for one person, but not
Yes.
far too big for one person to enjoy.
Yes.
And
Yes.
going through the cancer, I had a carer, and the house is big enough for two
Yes.
people to live separately and
Yes.
just use the same kitchen. And when she
Yes.
left, I thought, oh, wow, I really need somebody in the house. And the universe didn't supply it. And it took me a while to realize that must have been a message that you don't need somebody. I've got you,
Yes.
universe, source,
Yes.
whatever. Um, and so then I was able to step back and relax. But being isolated on a farm, my neighbours are miles away. And as you get older, you trip over the blessed hose.
Yes. Yes.
Life changes. Yes.
Yes.
So thank you so much for sharing that, because that is important to women our age. And my gosh, you don't ever think that you're going to end up down there, but
For
that's life.
sure.
We do.
Thank you, Margarita. I agree. We've got to share our stories because you just never know who's going to hear it and who
Yes.
it's going to be exactly what they needed to hear. So at first I was a little bit embarrassed about it because, you always think I felt like I was going backwards by doing something like that. But now I can see that it was
Yeah.
wise mind, and also women need to hear it because we don't often see the way out of a circumstance. We just build these walls, and if anybody can be helped by that solution, then that's wonderful.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing. You've shared so many gold nuggets here today. It's
Thank you.
incredible. Thank you. So
Thank you,
Fiona,
Margarita.
thank you for sharing not only your business journey, but your heart, your wisdom, and your culture with us today. Your
Thank
story is
you.
a powerful reminder that purpose can grow from even the most difficult experiences. So, from the heart, thank you. And
Thank you,
folks,
Margarita.
I look forward to sharing the story of another extraordinary, ordinary woman with you all. Thank you for joining us today. And if you enjoy hearing the stories of these extraordinary, ordinary women doing extraordinary things, I invite you to subscribe and join us for future conversations. With heart, Margarita.